Hello and welcome to LA Currents. I'm Anita Bennett. Well, Juneteenth marks a special day in U.S. history. On June 19, 1865, the last group of enslaved people in the country were freed. Joining us to discuss this freedom celebration here in the city of Los Angeles, as well as some of the other key issues affecting the city right now, is Councilmember Marqueece Harris-Dawson. Thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, once again, we do it again.
Yes, there it is, every June.
Okay, so Juneteenth has been a federal holiday for a few years now, and it's also a state holiday. So in your opinion, why is it important that we continue to celebrate this day?
Well, it's an important story to remember. It's part of the American story. It's part and parcel of the American story. Slavery is something that really isn't recognized in any other formal way as a part of U.S. history, and it's such a big part of who we are as a country and who we've been, and really vestiges of which we are still trying to overcome to this day. And then there are the particularities of the story of Juneteenth that just shows the struggle and working through something. And so, you know, we here in Los Angeles, we wish homelessness would go away tomorrow and we could just have solved that problem. The story of Juneteenth teaches that, you know, even after a war, after the government sent several people to Texas who didn't make it all the way to Texas for some reason.
So the word that about the Emancipation Proclamation did not make it to Texas.
Exactly. It didn't make it to Texas. Shows that you just got to stick with something. You got to stick with it over time, especially big problems. And so that's an important lesson that Americans, Angelenos, and everybody, frankly, around the world can use in their day-to-day life.
It really is incredible that it's been over 200 years and yet we still are dealing with some of these struggles.
That's right. That's right. You see it in every walk of American life. You know, you look at the people of African descent and you say, hey, what's going on there? And then you look at the history and you understand that that's how this country started. It started really with slavery, as President Obama called it, as the original sin. And we continue to try to work our way out of that generation after generation.
It's really interesting, the original sin. So, and you mentioned homelessness. We are definitely going to come back to that. But I want to talk more about Juneteenth. How are you celebrating the holiday?
Well, you know, we have several celebrations, formal celebrations now throughout the county of Los Angeles, certainly a lot here in the city. You know, I grew up before, you know, Juneteenth was something that was recognized by mainstream society and certainly not the government. And so school was usually out by that time of year, and, you know, you just have informal barbecues, picnics, so on and so forth. And so there will be a lot of that as well. Mm-hmm.
You went to an HBCU. Tell us about what school, and did they mark Juneteenth there?
You know, I went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, historically black college, the college Martin Luther King graduated from. Very proud of it, but school was usually out by the time Juneteenth came, so we'd get out of school in May, so there was no formal recognition of Juneteenth because, you know, that first day, that last final, I was on a plane back to LA for the summer.
For people who want to give back for Juneteenth, instead of celebrating, doing something for the community, what would you recommend they do?
Well, you know, there's always our local organizations and our local churches. Everybody's doing something. And so there is the small sort of anonymous gift if you just want to take clothes. You know, when you see people living on the street in your community, know that they always need underwear and socks. That is the #1 request of people living on the street. So there's that, but there's your local church is always doing something, and your local community organization as well.
Let's go back to Morehouse. Why did you go to an HBCU?
Well, I was an activist as a teenager, and I wanted to learn activism. I looked at all the schools. Worked out that Martin Luther King was a graduate of Morehouse College. I figured he knew a little something about activism, so I sought it out and understood the tradition of fighting to build a better world for our people, but also for every human being on the face of the planet. And so that's the school I chose, and it was a great experience.
And you took that out into the world after college. You became a community organizer.
Became a community organizer, found the Community Coalition. They were working on nuisance liquor stores and tobacco and alcohol billboards near schools, and the over-incarceration and criminalization of young black and brown people. And so I got to cut my teeth in a very exciting political scene where lots of challenging things were happening, but those challenges presented opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Were there any specific things that you learned at Morehouse that helped you when you decided to get into politics?
Well, there's a lot. There's far too many to name, but certainly that the point of society is the human family. That the reason why we have cities, towns, states, countries, groups, organizations, churches, clubs, all of it is to benefit the individual human and all the members of the human family. And so that whatever we do, it ought to forward the cause of humanity. And so that really is the guiding value that shapes the work that I do as a community organizer, certainly as a member of the City Council.
In terms of giving back, how do we use the momentum from Juneteenth, this positive energy, and take it into the future in terms of addressing homelessness?
Well, I think it's a great story. I think it is at one level, it's a sad story that people imagine being a slave and you have to stay a slave 2 years longer than was legally required because the news didn't get to you. Incredibly tragic, but also triumphant, right? Imagine you're living there and you think there's no end in sight. This is never going to get better. We're never going to get people off of the streets. We're never going to have people make a wage that they can afford to live in a decent house in this city. And then suddenly things change. And they change because people keep pushing and people keep hope for a better future.
But hope is not going to resolve homelessness.
No, work resolves homelessness. And sometimes when the bed feels really good or you get discouraged, hope is the thing that makes you keep working instead of quitting.
We actually have some really good news about you. You are going to be the next president of the Los Angeles City Council. That is huge. You will only be the second African American council president in history. How did this process come about?
Well, we knew we'd need a new city council president at the end of the year because Council President Krikorian will come to the end of his time on the council. It was important to many of us on the council, including Council President Krikorian, that we not have an abrupt transition. He had an abrupt transition, so one day he wasn't council president, the next day he was, and the old president had already gone. And so we wanted to set up a process, one, that held the council together as much as possible, because there's tremendous ideological diversity on the council at this time. So we wanted to hold the council together and have operational unity so we can get this business of the city done. But also we wanted to leave time so that there was a good down ramp and on ramp to the leadership of the council.
And when do you officially assume the position?
So September 20th is the date that Council President Krikorian will gracefully hand over the gavel and we'll be on. The great thing about that is Council President Krikorian will still be there for a couple months in case there are any bumps in the road or things that we hadn't anticipated. We'll get the benefit of his experience.
Are you feeling any particular pressure because this is historic?
I feel pressure on the one hand, but we lean on the stories. This is, I feel like I'm part of the tradition of this city and the tradition of our community in this city. Carlotta Bass was the first African American to run for council in 1947. She ran in the 8th Council District, and she ran on a platform of rent control and tenant protections. So this is a long story, and I'm just a part of it. You asked about what was great about Morehouse. One of our professors, Professor Fluker, would always say when he was trying to get us to focus or to learn something or to dial into a lesson, he'd always say, "When it's your turn on the stage of history, will you know your lines?"
Ooh, that's good.
And that that's certainly how I feel. The way you know your lines is you've been paying attention to the play the whole time. And our story is a great one that I've been engaged of, and I'm happy to have a sentence or two in that story.
Well, Councilmember Marqueece Harris-Dawson, happy Juneteenth to you.
Thank you. Happy Juneteenth to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming in to discuss Juneteenth and your journey to becoming council president.
Thank you so much. It's always good to be here.